This is the community meeting to discuss the remedial design implementation plan, which is kind of the guts of the cleanup plan that's been approved by the water board. This is actually not a water board meeting. Wood is sponsoring this meeting. Wood is Ford is hosting this meeting. Wood is here on behalf of Ford, and Wood is the environmental engineering consultant firm that Ford has been using this entire time. So with me tonight, first of all, is Jessica Law. We all know Jessica. She's the project manager, but that's been leading this project for several years. Also is Hui, and Hui is with Wood. She's an engineer, and she'll be making the presentation tonight. Mike Barnes, I think everybody knows Mike Barnes. He's been managing this project on behalf of Wood. And then Daniela. Daniela, you are a registered engineer or? Yeah, professional engineer. So our presentation tonight is about 20 minutes. And again, the cleanup plan for this site was approved. This is to discuss how it will be implemented and what that looks like and to get comments or questions from you on that. And Hui will give about a 20-minute presentation on the RDIP, as we call it, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. If you have a question during this, we have no problem answering it. Just raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone. A couple housekeeping things. We are recording this presentation, so people that didn't want to come out and brave the cold can watch it from the comfort of their own homes. So if you do have a question, these microphones are tricky. You have to put them in your mouth and talk very close to them. Can't talk down here, can't talk over here. So if I shove it out, right into your mouth. That's why I'm doing that. So I wanted to make sure. And the reason we want to do that is so that we could actually record your question for anybody that views this at a later time. Okay? Oh, here we go.
Okay, wait, you said that it's all been approved?
The RDIP? No, I'm sorry. The cleanup plan itself, the idea of it has been approved, but this is actually the guts of that. So this is how it will be implemented, and we're here tonight to hear your thoughts about that. So I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, Daniela, I believe that there's some opportunity for moving this or moving that, but most of this is probably somewhat decided. We did take input on, where it's going to be, what the system will look like, how it will be housed.
Ready to work with you guys to make adjustments.
So the question was, has this been approved? And we're ready to work with you to make any kind of adjustments. And I will say that will go through the entirety of this project. We'll have people out here to answer your questions when we're implementing it and to work with anybody that might have issues with it. Sure. Thanks for the question. Okay.
Yes. And so for this meeting, yeah, I was going to say they can hear me. Ford's hosting this one so that they can present that draft remedial design and implementation plan, get any feedback, because it's the guts of implementing the remedy. We want to make sure there's your concurrence, your questions, concerns are answered before they send it to the water board and I review it, because when I look at it, I'm going to assume everything that's, that you guys have had your chance to raise your concerns, which is also why I'm just kind of hanging out on the side. So that way I can hear them and make sure they're incorporated or discussed prior to submittal.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. And I would also add that we do have lots of avenues for you to provide input throughout the whole project. We have a website. Jessica's always available. Mike's available. Daniela, Hui are available. I'm available. So there's folks to call. There's definitely a lot of communication loops. So tonight, if you don't have a comment or a question, you can always get back to us with that. All right. So I'm going to give this to Hui to take over. And then, I think Mike wants to kick it off. Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to give everybody kind of an update on the project timeline and where we are today. So the site investigation activities started in 2018, and the majority of those were completed in 2021. We do have some data gap investigation activities that are occurring to the north in what we call Parcel 1 or Newport North apartment homes. And then we have some additional investigation going on kind of north of Bison. But for all intents and purposes, the investigation activities within this particular HOA are done. That led us into the production of a human health risk assessment. During that assessment, we received water board comments, which we responded to, and then received a request from the Water Board to develop a feasibility study and remedial action plan. We came down in July of 2021 to have a meeting similar to this one to discuss the feasibility study and the remedial action plan. And the way to think about that document and how it's different than the remedial design implementation plan that we're talking about tonight is that's kind of a conceptual document, kind of the idea behind the remedial alternative or the remedial alternatives that we're considering and whether or not they're feasible. The feasibility study also included a public comment period where the community was able to submit their comments either in writing or in phone calls or during that feasibility study meeting that were then addressed in a responsiveness summary and incorporated into the final FS wrap. Now, what we're discussing here today are, as Tracy indicated, kind of the nuts and the bolts of the design. So it's called the Remedial Design Implementation Plan. It's the plan on how we're going to implement our remedial design, and we're going to go into the specifics about that today. And we don't have a formal comment period for that. But as Daniela indicated, we're willing to work with the community to make sure that we're meeting your needs and your expectations of the system to have as little impact to the community as we can, but to meet the project goals and objectives of cleaning everything up. And then Wei will go into more detail about the timeline related to the remedial implementation. And there's different phases of that. What's nice and that we can give as a comparison is Bay Ridge Park, which is next door to you all, is about 6 months ahead of you all. We actually started this week boots on the ground and subsurface work related to our remedial design. And so I anticipate that work with this particular HOA to start in about 6 to 8 months. So you're about 6 to 8 months behind them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wei.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hui Li. I'm the design engineer for this remediation project, and I am going to give you an update of our design and our plan to implement this project today. As Mike mentioned, previous investigation and risk assessment concluded that there's some vapor intrusion occurring in some of the properties within your property or in your community. And then, so as a part of the solution, we have been working on longer term solution in addition to the temporary solution, like distributing some air purifiers to some homes. So the longer term solution, that's part of the FS wrap we were talking about. We evaluated different technologies, and the goal is to meet these remediation objectives and to protect human health and the environment. So among the different technologies we evaluated, the Water Board approved soil vapor extraction as the remedy. And after the remedy is approved, we have been working on the actual design of the system, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So first, just a little recap, like what is the SVE, soil vapor extraction. So vapor intrusion occurs when the vapor in the soil actually migrate into your house and affect your indoor air quality. And you can think of the soil vapor SVE system as a giant vacuum. So we install above ground vacuum blower and then extract contaminant vapor from underground and through the below ground SVE soil vapor extraction well. And then the extracted vapor will be treated by above ground treatment system and then discharged to the atmosphere under a permit from the air board. And by removing the contaminant from the soil, we can interrupt the vapor intrusion into the building. And here is the conceptual design we submitted with the draft FSRAP last year to the water board. And based on the pilot test we conducted back in 2020 and used the 0.1 inches of water as a threshold minimum vacuum. We estimate the ROI as 70 feet, and the ROI is a radius of influence is basically how far a vacuum after it's applied to a SVE well the vacuum can reach. So like how far it can be effective. So using the 70 feet as ROI, we propose to have 14 well pairs throughout your community to cover the potentially impacted area. And we also have three treatment systems. I think it's kind of hard to see right now, but those rectangles, there's one, there's two, and there's three. Three treatment systems throughout the community. But during the design process, we worked with your HOA and try to make the impact to your community minimize the impact to community and still meet the remedial objectives. And that's what I'm going to show you what our revised system look like now. And here's the design process we have gone through. So first, based on the pilot test results, we estimated we chose the appropriate vacuum and the flow rate of the system, and then we calculated the pressure drop through the system and sized the equipment like the blower and the piping. And we also ran a numerical model to evaluate the performance of the system. Oh, this is really hard to see. But just very briefly, this is one of the modeling results. So here in the middle this is the SVE well, and there should be some, probably you can see from your handouts. There are like red arrows. Those are the airflow. The airflow after the vacuum applied to the SVE well, that's the airflow induced by the vacuum. And those blue numbers on the blue lines are the air velocity, which can be generated after the vacuum applied to the SVE well. And in accordance to the Army Corps of Engineers design guideline, the 0.0001 meters per second, that air velocity, when you have that is considered as an effective vacuum. And then the distance between the SVE well and this 0.0001 line is the radius of influence. So that's how one of the evaluating the system. And the model results actually showed us the ROI is actually larger than we previously estimated. And instead of 70, is actually 100 feet. So this is the comparison between the revised design versus the original design. And the revised design, we used the model simulation results of 100 feet of ROI, and instead of previously estimated 70 feet ROI. And you can see the green dots are the SVE wells, and those circles are the ROI circles. So this is 100 feet, and that's 70 feet. And this yellow rectangle is the treatment system. So instead of 14 well pairs from the previous conceptual design, we only need 8 SVE wells to cover the similar potentially impacted area. We were able to decrease the. This is not going to work. Sorry, I'm just going to stand up. We will also be able to decrease the number of the treatment systems from 3 to 1. This pointer's not working. And you can see the revised system layout better. This one without the ROI circles. And you can see these green dots. Green dots are the SVE wells. And here's the treatment system. It's next to the sidewalk, to the swimming pool here. And those dark line, the black lines are the underground piping connecting the SVE wells to the treatment system. And as you can see, this is a much simpler SVE network. And also, less trenching. Underground trenching means shorter construction period duration too. And also because we walked the site with Mark and Carla back last year, and we chose the location of the treatment system is basically minimize the disruption to your day-to-day life. That's we're not using like a parking lot and also I just want to emphasize our model shows the simpler SVE network still going to meet the remedial objectives. And also, as I'm going to mention later, we will continue perform monitoring of the indoor air and soil gas to basically evaluate and show the effectiveness of the SVE system. So what happened next? And after our remedial RDIP, we call Remedial Design and Implementation Plan is approved, we will start implementation. And I will walk you through the different steps of the implementation so you know what to expect next. So before we actually install the treatment system, we install the SVE treatment system. We plan to conduct sub-slab depressurization pilot test first. And the SSD is a contingency remedy, just in case like the SVE cannot effectively prevent vapor intrusion. And there are a few reasons we want to conduct the pilot test, SSD pilot test first. And the one, first of all, it's least impact to the community. We're going to choose one house, and we're looking for volunteers. Choose one house, and then the whole test is going to be less than 1 week. And another reason is, although this is like a contingency remedy, but it's good after we conduct the pilot test, then we will have all the design parameters ready in case we do need to design it in the future. So about the SSD system, it's quite similar to a radon mitigation system, if you guys are familiar with that. Everybody, somebody lived God. If you ever lived in East Coast, not just the West Coast, then you know what it is. You're probably familiar with it. And so basically, you're going to have a vapor collection pipe underneath your building, and you have a blower to extract the vapor and discharge above your roof line. So the vapor will not go inside your, that's what we call mitigation of the vapor intrusion, right? It's not going inside your building. And we will evaluate the need of SSD individually throughout the SVE operation. So if it's needed, then we will really look into like use different evaluation tool, like different data, and decide whether it's actually SSD is going to be needed. Because eventually you're going to have a piping going to roof line, and have a blower, and you have to draw underneath your, have a whole like connection pipe underneath your house. And yeah, just like I said, we're still looking for volunteers to do the pilot test. And after the SSD pilot test, we'll start implement our remedy. And the first step is to install the groundwater monitoring wells, and we are going using that to monitor the decline of the contaminants in groundwater, and that's what we actually did for the past week at the Bay Ridge Park. And here, over here is the like a typical drilling rig when you install the groundwater monitoring well, and here is the finished well box. After the groundwater monitoring wells are installed, we're going to install 8 SVE wells. And here's just like a typical content of the wellhead. We'll have pipe, we'll have valve, and we also have flow rate and vacuum measuring device. And as I said, we're still like in the process of finalize the design, so we haven't like including the well box as well. After the SVE wells are installed, we're going to start to install the piping, basically connect those wells to the treatment system. And here is just like a photo showing like we're going to do trenching and connecting the piping and then backfill. So after backfill, we're going to restore the road, the trench, either to match the existing pavement, or some of the piping is going through landscaping area. And I know you guys like have really good landscape, and very proud of that. And we'll definitely match that to the current. So the word Mike used is like, if it's not the same, it's going to be better. So after the trenching, this is just like a rendering figure, and so we're going to place a custom structured building. That's the sidewalk to the swimming pool there, and this building will enclose all the treatment equipment and will be soundproofed. And so when you walk your dog next to it, you won't hear, like, it won't be noisy. It will sound like our design requirement is 1 meter, basically 3 feet from the building. It's need to be sound like a fridge. That's the soundproof we're requiring. Fridge. What? And we are also going to the exterior of the building. We are going to make it match the houses in the community. Our plan is to operate the treatment system continuously for 1 year, And after that, we will spend a few months to collect additional data, conditional samples, and then evaluate whether it's effective, evaluate the performance of the system, and then make a decision.
Building reflects the tone and tenor of the neighborhood, and it doesn't just look like
A
a
box.
cargo
Yeah, yeah.
with siding.
But in all honesty, the building should just disappear.
Okay.
I mean, it really should be landscaped so that it doesn't even look like there's.
Okay.
And I do a lot of commercial projects, and it's not that good.
Okay. And Mike, I believe that what we've all agreed to is that the HOA can look at and approve the final building product. Is that correct?
We'll work with the HOA to come up with something. I mean, regardless, there's gonna be a building there, but we've already been talking to Mark about like putting vines on the front, like to create a planter box in front of it so that we can kind of hide it. Can you go back to
Crazy.
the?
They're already working with the HOA and looking at methods to make it
I'll repeat
unobtrusive,
it.
including land.
Can you go back a slide? So one of the ideas is we have to have access to these two doors. So those two doors cannot be obstructed. But one of the ideas we were talking about with Mark was to maybe put a planter box or a soiled area right here so that we can grow some vines up along it, right, to kind of hide it. We were also talking to Mark about potentially pitching the roof a little bit to make it look more like the buildings with the tiles on top. So those things are under consideration. One of the things is we have to get into the top of the building to potentially remove those carbon vessels to replace those. So we'll work with the subcontractor that we're using, but this is just kind of a rendering to give you an idea of the size. But we're definitely willing to plant, you know, if you want a rhododendron on the right and a bougainvillea on the left, not a problem.
I do a lot of commercial landscaping, and vines takes too long.
Yeah.
And it shreds and loses its leaves and everything else. You really need to look at bushes.
Perennials.
No.
I mean, annual.
I'm not even annuals. I'm talking about bushes.
Okay.
Okay, shaped bushes that just make it disappear. And maybe your doors can be on the side instead of the front, so that you can just have a whole shrubbery there. But my concern is homes are going up for sale right now. And if I drove into the community and saw that, it would not encourage me to buy here right now.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Okay, noted.
Comment noted, and we'll make sure that that's incorporated. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know, and I have no microphones.
Sorry.
When they trench the street, okay, is that gonna impact us getting in and out of our garages or, you know, the street, going down the street?
Good question. But so what happens is we are going to trench them by sections. So you're not going to see all the trench open at the same time. So by sections, and we backfill, and we are going to make sure you have access. So we're going to we're going to use trench plates. You see those steel plates? So you can drive over it. I know.
How long is this gonna go on?
The construction, the trenching is about 2 months, 2 months. But not going to be, so we're going to like in sections, right? We backfill and hot patch. So for your house specifically, I want to say maybe a week, 2 to the most.
Because they're gonna go 100 feet down, right?
Oh, no. It's 8 inches at the top, so at the bottom, 2-3 feet.
Oh, that's all the drench is?
Yes.
We'll work with the HOA and the individual owners that have the garages to communicate with them days in advance to say, hey, we're going to be in front of your house. Can you please park in a guest parking spot if you need to leave? And worst case scenario, let's say you didn't anticipate something. I got to go pick up my daughter. I got to go do something. We can stop work. They'll pull over a trench plate. You can either pull in or pull out. So we'll work with you to get in and out. But you should have access restricted, limited amount.
Okay, I'll go to next slide then. This is just another rendering figure showing you like the building without the roof And then just showing you all the equipment is going to be enclosed, and we are going to, grade the current sloped landscaping area and build a retaining wall. So after the system is installed, we are going to the OM&M phase, and so for the first week or so, we're going to start the system, fine tune it, make sure it's operating as designed, and then, like as I mentioned earlier, we plan to operate the system continuously for 1 year, and monthly we'll come collecting samples to evaluate the performance and also to be in compliance with the air district permit. We, besides the monthly visiting to the site, we will come periodically to perform necessary maintenance. And after 1 year's operation, we'll shut the system down and collecting some additional samples. Also, in the meantime, we are going to continue to do the routine sampling of groundwater, soil vapor, and indoor air. And here's a preliminary remediation schedule. And I just want to point out this duration may change due to the procurement, like supply chain problems and weather, permitting, and other factors. So we are submitting the RDIP by the end of March, and we're expecting to get approved in April or May. And then after that, we'll first start with the SSD pilot test. So sometime in the second quarter, May or June, we'll do that for 1 week. And then from the second quarter to the end of the year, so it's also probably like in May or June, we'll start the implementation of the remedy. And we plan to turn the system down toward end of the year and then run it from end of this year toward end of 2023. So after that, we're going to shut the system down, collecting additional samples to evaluate the condition and the system performance, and then we'll make a decision on the path forward. That's it.
Thanks. One thing I wanted to add with respect to communication to the community is when we get ready to do any of these activities, we'll send out notices of work, and it'll basically be a document introducing ourselves again, the goals and objectives of that said work. It'll have a schedule, it'll have some pictures of what to expect, along with phone numbers for you to reach out and contact people. So we'll work very closely with the HOA so a drill rig doesn't show up that you didn't know about.
Okay. Oh, we have 2 microphones just in time. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions, and I see him, but are there other people? Because I'm going to do the popcorn thing just because I'm old and tired and cold. So 1, 2, and who else? And back here. Okay, perfect.
You're going to be evaluating this at the end of 1 year of operation. What makes you think that the problem is actually going to be remediated, in a short amount of time? This has been percolating for the better part of 35 years. And I don't see that 1 year, no matter how effective is this remediation to actually remove this vapor in a short amount of time.
Excellent question. So we did conduct a soil vapor extraction pilot test in the neighboring property at Bay Ridge Park. And based on the performance of that system, we're able to evaluate how much mass we can remove from the subsurface. I should clarify that the evaluation process of the system will be continuous from the time that we turn it on throughout that entire year. So we're not just evaluating it after a year. I think we'll have a pretty good understanding of the effectiveness of this system probably 6 months into the SVE extraction system startup. But based on the pilot test and our understanding of the radius of influence, the chemicals of concern that are beneath the surface and their concentrations and the equipment being used, that this is an effective system.
Mike, I would also add, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think you'll be reporting on the efficacy or how well this is working to the community, right?
Correct,
So there'll
correct.
be information going out
Yeah.
at the start and halfway through.
Yeah, and I just also want to reiterate that this is a twofold process with the system. One, it's removing the mass, right? But it's also our goal to eliminate the pathway or the exposure pathway, which is the soil vapors entering through the house into your breathing space. So it's kind of a twofold approach. Pardon?
Not in all the houses.
It's correct. It's not in all of the
No,
houses.
So it's, oh, okay. So-
But the system is designed to address all of the houses. Well, all of the houses within a remedial goal. Yeah, half of the community.
Right.
Thank you for that
Okay.
clarification. Yeah.
Okay, my question was on page 14, where you have the 8 SVE wells, and it appears on the right-hand side of the picture are the round ones that are in the round, whatever, the wells in the street?
This one?
No,
Is-
the other one you had, the one right after, that
Oh,
one.
yeah.
The right. Are those the 8 wells that you're talking about?
Those are actually the pilot test wells we installed at Bay Ridge Park.
Okay.
They might.
So what is the one on the right? It's
White is
well
a
box.
different kind of well box.
What-
As
And we're not having that.
we are in the process of design and depends on, we'll try to minimize the size of the well box. So I
So
don't really have
You
an
don't-
answer yet.
You're not telling us which one you're going to use, is the round circle or the well box?
The well box itself doesn't have all those measuring, it doesn't contain those
So we already
measuring.
have the things that measure the chemical.
So
We
gas
We already
probe.
have those, the probes.
Yeah, this is different. This is a extraction well. So
Okay,
you're
I
measuring your
understand that.
flow and your vacuum.
Correct. So that well would hook up to that building, correct?
Yes.
So why would we have to have the bigger one compared to the smaller ones?
So the smaller one is we used during the pilot test, and the hose and the measuring device is outside of the. So we basically keep that open. I wonder whether we still have a a poster.
So am I
So
getting?
I think I can answer your question. So the one on the left, if it was like an industrial area, that would be our preference because we can include all of our equipment into that well box. Granted, it's a big well box, and so we're trying to figure out a way that we can minimize that footprint. The ones on the right are an example of a smaller footprint, but they don't get all the information that we need. We can't put all the measurements in that smaller space. And so we're working to try to figure out, can we get away with those smaller ones and do an alternative way of measurement? Or are we gonna need to rely on a slightly bigger well box? Our goal is to minimize the footprint in the street for you guys.
And that's still in process.
Yeah, the design is still ongoing.
Okay, great.
But I take the comment that you would prefer the smaller footprint, which is sort of what we assumed. Yeah.
The less obtrusive of anything
Understood.
is
Yes.
the most.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and back here. And then anybody else? It's working this time.
Two questions. One, the one gentleman asked about the efficacy of the remediation. And you've done some testing, and so far it looks positive. But unless I didn't hear how long this could potentially go on.
So once we run the system for a year, we're going to turn it off and we look for what's called rebound. And rebound is a process in which the chemicals which have sorbed, which have attached themselves to soil particles, release back into the pore spaces, the vapor in the soil. That process can, I'm positive we'll see a decrease in soil gas concentrations when we run the system. And the process of rebound may mean those soil gas concentrations increase after we turn the system off. How long that takes is sort of unclear, but that's what we'll be monitoring for. There may be a point at which we would need to turn on the system again, which I think is what you're asking about. And that would be decided by the data and by the water board. But the goal is not to perpetually run this system. We're looking at this remedy as, a couple years. So 1 year of operation, maybe a year of that rebound testing, turning it on the system and off. That's the goal. It's not a remedy that is like, a 10-year time frame or a 30-year time frame. We're talking short term, and I put air quotes around the short because it's not, 1 month, but a couple years.
And has this been done in other communities anywhere in the country?
Yes, this is
SVE is a very well established soil vapor extraction system.
And a project comparable to
remedy.
ours, how long did that go? Was it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Do you have any data on that?
There are too many variables for me to make a direct comparison, right? It's not apples to apples. The lithology is different in certain sites. The contributing sources are different. The mass, how much soil gas. I mean, overall, and I think we expressed this in previous meetings, is there's just not a lot of mass here at the site. These concentrations, if you want to compare to other sites, are relatively low. And so we're not actually removing that much mass. And so to try to say, yep, the site down the street at, the airport is the same, it's really hard to do that. So I can't make a direct comparison.
All right. And last question for you, the remediation equipment and the structures and that, how long do they remain? And then when you remove them, I work with a lot of cities and counties. I just hope it's in writing what will be restored.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of times government just cuts back and does the minimum. So I hope we have it articulated as to the scope of what will be done, how it will be brought back to its original condition, if not better than its original condition.
Excellent question and excellent point. And we discussed this actually earlier tonight with Mr. Greer, the HOA president. We'll be connecting. So we have a current access agreement. We have 2 access agreements. Right now, we have an access agreement for individual properties to conduct the indoor air sampling. And we also have an access agreement, for lack of a better term, the common area to install the soil gas probes. This SVE installation will is covered under the current access agreement, but what we're going to do is have the HOA council connect with the Ford council and Carla Joyce, who's in charge of the common areas, to ensure that she's comfortable and your attorney is comfortable with the language that's in the access agreement to ensure that conditions are restored to their previous, if not better, conditions. So that'll be all captured in an access agreement, which is a legal binding document. And to answer your question, so our goal would be to run the system for a year. Then we monitor the rebounding. We determine whether or not that system needs to be turned back on. And sometimes they call this pulsing, right? You can come back on, turn it on for a week, remove more contamination, then shut it down again. Ideally, I think we would like to come in, say 6 months after that initial year of shutting it down and turn off the system somewhat permanently. Once we do that, we've been asked to remove the treatment system completely, remove the concrete pad, and restore that entire area to how it looked previously, which we're more than willing to do. One thing that we'd like to do, though, is leave the subterranean piping just in case that system needs to come back at a future date, right? Because that's out of sight, out of mind for the most part, with the exception of the well boxes on top. So we'd like to leave that equipment there just in case we need to bring a system back in and do what I mentioned before, the pulsing exercise. We have that ability.
Other questions?
Your well box is going to be on the street? And you're saying the well box will be on the street?
So there'll be a combination of them. So there are wells that are going to be in the common areas that are basically, there's some lines that run behind the walls of these units here on Hillsdale. Those will be in the vegetated areas. There is a line or a couple different lines. I think it's all Hillsdale. Yeah, there are a couple different lines that will run in the street. Let's see, Hoy's going to get to. Oh yeah, traffic rated boxes and everything. You can drive over them, everything. And I do want to mention that the trenching picture there, where it looks like it's been cut, it won't look like that. We'll re-asphalt it, we'll recover it and everything, so it'll look nice.
Does the well box give off any noise?
No. Mm-mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Perry's got a question here.
Thanks. I would point out that the streets belong to Belcourt Master.
Correct.
So please make sure to coordinate with them when you're resurfacing the streets.
Correct. Okay. Yeah.
All right? So
Yep.
reach out to them and include them, the association. That's Liz Reed. Please contact her with regard to any removal and replacements.
Now, is Liz the HOA president of Belcourt Master?
No.
Who is Liz?
She is the
She's with the-
Keystone.
okay,
She's the
she's with Keystone. Okay, I
property
know Liz.
manager.
Okay.
But she's the one that you should be coordinating with, and then she'll surface that up to the board.
Got it. Yep.
How many meetings have we been to, Mike? Many, many meetings.
This is at least 10.
At least 10.
Yeah.
And each time I ask, is there legal representation here from Ford who can brief us on the implications to us as homeowners? And then secondly, real estate. If I'm not selling my house, but some, as was mentioned earlier, some of us will be selling our homes. What do we tell our real estate agent?
Sure.
To tell the homeowners? Is there something in writing that can be dumbed down that isn't three-letter abbreviations?
Yeah.
That a real estate agent can understand and disclose without causing lawsuits subsequently?
Yeah,
So
yeah, no problem.
Again,
Two questions.
Legal and real estate.
Okay, so to answer the first question, no, there is not Ford legal representation at these meetings. And to answer the second question as far as disclosure, Ford has a cover letter that states if you have had your home sampled and have a results letter, everybody gets their home sampled, gets a results letter that shows what the results were, the next steps, where they fall into the sampling program. They recommend including that along with the cover letter as a disclosure statement to any potential property sales. In addition to that, I always invite prospective buyers or sellers to contact the 866 number. It'll ultimately come to me. They all do. And I have walked, my approach with prospective sellers and buyers is to walk them through the results letter, to break it down in layman's terms, what they are looking at, what it means, so that they can make an informed decision. I will not discuss risk with them related to it. I will not discuss whether or not I would buy the home or whether or not I would raise my kids in the home. Those are areas I won't touch on, but I will try to walk them through the letter so that they can understand it and make an informed decision. If they have questions related to risk, I will refer them to Jessica and Awiha. And I think that answers most of your questions as far as disclosure. I mean, it's the same answer, Perry, pretty much.
And I just want to say OEHA is the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want that clarified. Are you going to retest all of the homes again, or this is when you did that pilot sampling a couple of years ago?
So are you talking about indoor air testing
Well,
of your
I
home?
gather that's what you want to disclose.
Yes. So if you've had your home tested, you will then fall into a long-term indoor, or what we're calling a revised indoor air monitoring plan. And those letters were mailed January that listed where your home fell as far as within the indoor air monitoring program, whether your home was recommended for sampling every 6 months, every year, every 2 years, or every 5 years. If for any reason you do not have that letter and you've had your home tested, just find me afterwards. I'll take down your information and I can send you that letter.
Yeah, and I would just like to reiterate, we'll stay after the meeting if you have property-specific questions or even questions that you didn't want to ask in front of other people. We'll stay after to answer questions. So, and I see you there with your hand raised.
Can you briefly explain why the revised indoor air testing plan changed to long-term every 2 years when screening levels or reporting levels may not have changed since the prior testing, which previously said no further testing?
So from the water board perspective, the initial 2 rounds was to look at the initial risk. With vapor intrusion changes in building conditions or just home remodeling, things like that can change and affect vapor intrusion and cause it to increase. And so while right now most homes don't have any vapor intrusion occurring, that doesn't mean it's guaranteed while the concentrations stay the same. So to ensure there's no changes, one of our requests from that risk assessment was to conduct the long-term monitoring. There's been a lot of data collected here, and so from that, they used the different risk categories to categorize the frequency that still keeps it protective for those that live in the homes, which is why it ranges from the every 6 months to once every 5 years. And there were certain almost safety protective factors that went into that we reviewed and approved.
Okay, other questions? I'll give it a minute. Okay, I think then we will adjourn. Jessica, did you want to say anything at all, or no? No. Anybody else here want to say anything? Well, I would like to say thank you for coming out on such a cold and chilly evening. We appreciate everybody's time and the use of your space. And I apologize for the little bit of sound system that we have, but I guarantee the system we put in will work much better than these. So thanks so much. Good night.